in the White House. I don't know what's going to happen. But I'd like to see another one.
Yeah.
Was her husband a free man?
What's that?
Was her husband a free man?
Yes, he was a free man. Yeah. And thank God that he brought her out of that slavery, my great-grandmother. I never got the opportunity to meet her, but my grandmother told me what she had to go through with. But my grandmother held her head up high. She didn't know much. She didn't have too much education because she was born in slavery.
Did
She
your
couldn't
grandmother
read, she couldn't write.
Did your grandmother talk about when she came to the community near Maryfield, what it was like when she got here?
Well, she lived in Ilda, Virginia, but she talked about the community but my mother knew more than my grandmother knew because my grandmother met most of them, but she was getting up in age. See, when, now she knew, you remember Mr. Bud, that my grandmother knew him. And he used to always come over and talk with her because a lot of people like to talk to my grandmother to get the history of where she came from and how she came up. She knew the Robinsons, Jerry Robinson. I don't know whether you knew or not. My mother knew them too. But she didn't get to meet like Dolly's mother and Helen and all them and Guy because she was gone. But she got to meet Guy's father, Mr. Bud. She thought so much of him. And the older ones.
William Collins Sr.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, William Collins Sr. was born in 1840, so your grandmother was probably born around that time, perhaps.
Right. But she knew him as Mr. Bud.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. And she thought so much of him. Yeah.
Okay.
My mother got to know them better than she did, but she knew the Robinsons. Most of them are gone. But I admired my grandmother.
What year was it when they started organizing the church? About?
Where?
Like,
At Maryfield?
At Maryfield.
That must have been. Now I think at the same time they organized. It must have been in the early. What would you say?
My guess is about, it was during Reconstruction, after the Civil War, probably between 1875 and 1880. And then they purchased the land from Mr. Bradley around 1892.
Now, the land that they purchased from Mr. Bradley, that was the Frame Church. But before then, it was what?
It's a log cabin.
Log cabin. That's what I thought. Because it was the same thing at Mount Pleasant. That was back there in the 18 whatever. It was.
Well,
my grandmother didn't go to Maryfield. Mount Pleasant. She was one of the founding members of the Mount Pleasant Church, Mr. Crenshaw, because they helped to purchase the land.
About what year was that?
That was back then, 70-something.
Well, I know that James Lee came to Falls Church around 1868, and they created Second Baptist Church around 1872. And he talked about going to Mount Pleasant before they created Second Baptist.
Yeah.
And it's after that that they created Maryfield.
I think it was in 18, about longer than that, about 18 something, because they, now see, my grandmother did a lot. She purchased land for my father. She helped to purchase land for Mount Pleasant. So she did a lot. Those folks saved money. And they put money to a good use. Because as I said, my grandmother was living at, I guess she was on that farm at that time. She purchased that land, what they call Johnson Gardens now, for $10 an acre. I mean, that land was sold was almost 10,000 a foot. It was sold by the foot.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see. See, my father always said, it's money in the dirt bank. Because if you put money in the dirt bank, it's going to reap benefits. Because he told the truth. $10 an acre, Johnson got it. And we got rid of some land. It was almost like 10,000 a foot. It was so much. Very, very. But
So, are there other memories of First Baptist in Merrifield, the community that you can think of that you haven't told us about?
well, I can't think right off. But the only memories that I had is the good, not only the Christian foundation, the foundation of a good, productive life I got from that. Because the churches were like, not only were they spiritually, they were also a place where you could go and gather information from community and other places how to come up as a teenager and become productive. It was a guidance.
Did they also
It was
guide you?
counseling, and it was religiously, and what's that?
Guide you through segregation?
Segregation. Because when I had a problem, if I didn't want to go to my mother and father, I would go to the church, and it would be taken care of. But now, they don't have time.
Do you have any other questions?
I could sit down,
Elected
talk
officials
to the
at the
pastor,
time.
talk to one of the
And
deacons.
talk about President Kennedy since
So, who can you remember some of the elected officials at Merrifield when you were growing up? Do you remember who they were?
I can't remember.
congressmen, senators, city council people, you know, the people who ran Merrifield, the government, not necessarily the church, but
No, because I really could remember here,
Mhm.
but not too much in Merrifield because I was away from Merrifield at that time. Maybe the ones that grew up there would know, but I would know, you know, like here. But now most of the people in Merrifield, most of the people that ran for any office in Merrifield, they were connected with the church. See, it's not like now,
like who?
like officials now. They are out in the community mostly, but the officials in my time, when I was a youngster, they would be in the church.
Now you're talking officials that were in the church, not official government for Fairfax County.
No. The officials in the government would come to the church.
Right. Were they white that would come to the church?
Not per se, but most of them would come, like if they were officials, they would come and explain to us about what was happening in the community. But now I wouldn't see the white.
Right.
Now the only time you see the white is when they was running for office. Understand what I mean? Because they would come so they could get your vote.
Now, now the voting rights bill wasn't passed till the 60s, but were you able to actually vote in the 30s and 40s?
Oh yeah, because my father voted.
He paid his poll tax and
Yes, that's right.
he got
Paid
through
poll
the
tax, that's right.
literacy test.
That's right.
They made him do that.
That's right, sure did.
Do you know how much he paid on his poll
No,
tax?
I don't know, but I know he paid him. But he voted because he was Republican. He put who in? And he said, I'm changing.
So was it just down like in the deep South where they just forbid black
Yeah,
people?
that's it.
Okay, so
Now
Virginia.
see, we were a little bit farther away, but it was in the deep South where they would just give them a fit.
So, but Northern Virginia was a little bit more.
A little bit better, yeah. Because my father, they didn't have too much trouble, but they had to go about it secretly. But they didn't stop them from voting because he voted.
That's interesting.
And my brothers, they voted too.
So what things changed
But
after
what
the?
happened is that You have to fight for your voting rights. And a lot of them didn't want to go through all that. They gave up. That was the thing that hurt. And like my father said, I'm not giving up. I'm going to fight for my rights. But a lot of, because you'll be surprised. You got a lot of people now, don't even vote. Because they're going to put the same people in. But see, that's why you make a mistake.
So what do you think changed after the Voting Right Act and the Accommodation Act? Did you see a change?
Yes. You're seeing more people feeling free to go and to vote and to register. But before, they wanted to, but they were afraid. Because they didn't have anybody to back them. Who could back them? Because you probably might get lynched or put in jail. That's what I say. We live in a good time now, and we need to thank God, and we need to tell these young people, you've never had it so good.
So there was a fear of lynching in Fairfax.
It was a fear. Because my brothers, I could see that, they was afraid to do it. They was afraid to get in a car accident because it might be. Yeah. And it's like I say, when you live in fear like that, you go on and do what you're supposed to do. That's why I say I could never understand why it was that I was with a black family. That was my father and mother and all of us. We lived in a farm that was joined a white family, and they would come over on our farm and play with us and come in our house. But boy, you see them rascals out somewhere, like an Annandale, they run from you.
Let's talk about the NAACP a little bit.